afternoon. I'm glad you all could join us tonight. My name is Sally Hopley. I am the Sustainability Coordinator for Metropolitan Community College, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the 7th presentation of the Hubbard Sustainability Series. The goal of the Hubbard Sustainability Series is to showcase dynamic sustainability experts to the entire community. To achieve this goal, MCC at DoSpace has developed a series of presentations, each featuring sustainability superheroes and providing them at no cost to the viewing public. Today's topic is sustainable solutions to food waste, or closing the gap between food waste and hunger. Much of the food produced today never gets consumed. It's estimated that at least 30% of the food produced in the U.S. goes to waste, while 11% of American households face insecurity. Today we will learn how 2 different organizations are working to fix this gap. I'm glad you're here today because everyone can play a role in helping solve this issue. I'd like to give a special thanks to the trustees of the Claire M. Hubbard Foundation for providing the resources necessary to support this important endeavor at no cost to the public. Your generosity is much appreciated. Please join me in thanking them for their support. Thank you. Also, there are a few others we would like to mention today for helping make tonight successful. First, we'd like to give a shout out to No More Empty Pots for preparing the refreshments for this afternoon. No More Empty Pots is a local nonprofit working towards food waste reduction, healthy food access, and job training. We're thrilled to taste their hard work. Secondly, we'd like to highlight Hillside Solutions for helping us compost our waste today. Hillside Solutions offers both commercial and residential composting services in the Omaha area. And finally, we have a mini expo with local organizations also working on sustainable solutions for food waste. During the break, as well as after the event, I encourage all of you to visit these organizations to learn more about what they do and how you can get involved. Today we have Saving Grace Perishable Food Rescue, No More Empty Pots, and Countryside Community Church as a part of our expo. We appreciate you for joining us today. Please join me in thanking these groups for assisting us tonight. Okay, and before we get started, I do want to mention a few notes on the format for our presentation if you haven't joined us before. As usual, the speakers will not take questions during the audience will not take questions from the audience during the presentation or immediately after. Instead, all questions will be asked only during the panel conversation. I know that there may be burning questions throughout today's event, and I encourage you to submit those questions on the card provided in your seat. You will notice that there is a wicker basket on the blue table by the entrance. Please place all your questions in that basket, and we will make sure that we get them during the break. Thank you. And a few last bits of house cleaning before we get started. First of all, the restrooms are located behind you, down the hallway, and past the drinking fountains on the left. And then secondly, we are trying to make this a zero waste event, which means that we're diverting more than 90% of the materials produced today from the landfill. But we need your help to do that. So you'll notice that all of the items when you get your food, so it's the food, the plates, the cups, the silverware, all of those can be compostable. And so we do have a compost collection bin at our zero waste station in the back corner. It's going to be the first bin on the left with the green sign. So please place all your compostable items in that bin. Thank you very much. And then finally, if you need any assistance today, please make sure to find MCC DoSpace staff or myself if you need any help. Please allow me to introduce our first speaker, Beth Ostdiek Smith. She is the founder, CEO, and president of the Saving Grace Perishable Food Rescue. She's a skilled leader in business management, marketing, fundraising, donor development, and public speaking. She has experience from over 30 years in local business leadership roles and 15 years in nonprofit business. Beth has built her skills and leadership abilities in her past roles, where she has served as the Director of Community and Donor Relations at Partnership for Kids, President of Winter Circle Educational Program, and is the General Manager and Vice President for American Express. She's demonstrated success with her entrepreneurial spirit in building 2 nonprofit businesses that provide charitable services to our community. This has been done with sound business management, fundraising, team building, and volunteer recruitment in our corporate community. She's worked with Union Pacific Railroad, Omaha Public Power District, Mutual of Omaha, Lozier Manufacturing, and many others. Since creating Saving Grace in 2013, Beth and Saving Grace have won several awards. Beginning in 2013, they won the SCORE Sam Epstein Entrepreneurial Award, And then Saving Grace received the 2016 Greater Omaha Chamber Excellence Award for Innovation and the 2018 Food Day and the 2019 Earth Day Nonprofit of the Year Awards. Finally, Saving Grace also received the 2019 FBI Director's Community Leadership Award in Washington, D.C. Beth has traveled the world and learning about other cultures. She has volunteered as a mentor for inner city kids, helping those in need through the St. Vincent de Paul Society and visiting homebound and the elderly. She is a past member of the Executive Women's International and has served on many advisory boards and is currently a Nebraska representative with the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. Beth's life passion is to collaborate with others in her community and our community to bring together a brighter future. She strives to inspire those she meets to use their unique gifts and to acknowledge that we all have a purpose. She is now expanding her focus through Saving Grace to help our food desert community's nutritional needs while saving our landfills. Feeding bellies, not landfills. Please join me in welcoming Beth.
Wow. I thought she was going to do the shorter version of all. I do have a smaller one. I should have sent that. I didn't realize you were going to read it all, but thank you very much. And thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be here. I've been to quite a few of these events, I think every one but one. I was out of town, and it's just awesome, and it's right in line with what we do. I'm going to start off with just a couple of quick words because I was told I could spread my time a little bit. Start with, wisdom tells me I am nothing. Love tells me I am everything. And between the two, my life flows. That's a quote from Nirzurdata Mahara. And with that, I'd like to start this off real quick with a short little story. It's from a book by Mark Nepo. I don't know if any of you have ever read any of his passages. Having survived the inhumanity of the Holocaust and the death of her husband, the revered elder of the ghetto in Lithuania, Miriam Elks told her son years later of the two objects that sustained her. One was a piece of bread, which she always hid about her person. The other, a broken comb. She kept that bread in case someone needed it more than she. And no matter what, morning and night, she would comb her hair to affirm her person. What Miriam carried and how she used what she carried is a profound example of how the Spirit can turn ordinary objects into living symbols that can help us live. For what she carried, the bit of bread and the broken comb and the why she carried speaks wisdom of love itself and makes me ask, what small thing do we each carry that we can give to others more in need than we? And what constant gesture do we each carry by which we can affirm our person? To carry these questions alone is life-sustaining. For to carry the smallest crust of bread or the truth that we can offer always reminds us of two essential facts: that we do not live alone, and that no matter the severity of our own circumstances, we have something to give to others. So, with that said, like when I started this 13 years ago, and I come out, and it was all in theory, I would ask my audience, how many of you have ever wondered when you're out to the grocery store, at an event, at dinner, and what happens to all that extra food? Did any of you wonder that? That's good. I did too. And so did everyone else that I reached out to. So that's why I started Saving Grace Perishable Food Rescue. Go to the next. Oh, I'm the clicker. I'm like, are you going to click that? So the why. Kind of as was stated before, globally, 30 to 40% of all food produced ends up in our landfills. Just to give you a good visual, that's like 133 billion tons of food is wasted in the U.S. each year. Look how many 730 memorial stadiums could be filled with all that extra food. Growing that food never gets eaten uses up a quarter of the world's fresh water and annually releases 3.3 billion tons of CO2. The amount of waste has far-reaching impacts on society. Wholesome food that could have helped families in need is sent to the landfills. Land, water, labor, energy, and other inputs are also used in producing, processing, transporting, preparing, storing, and discarding of all that food. We could feed the world is hungry 4 times over each year with all that extra food. You know, they say we have food deserts, but that's because we become a throwaway society, including myself. So this is the time to start thinking about it. So let's come back to our home. Food is the largest contributor to landfills here in the Omaha area. And then 1 in 6 Nebraskans could go to bed hungry. And how many kids of those are going to bed hungry? And you know, with children, not only are they hungry, but how can they learn in their schools? You know, and then the health of a lot of our seniors that are out there that don't have good sustainable food. That's why we have Saving Grace, because we believe in feeding hungry bellies rather than landfills. Because, you know, here in the Midwest and on the East Coast and around, we know it just makes sense. So our vision and values, so we, of course, about rescuing the Heartland's bounty so it doesn't go to waste, but we do this through collaborations, and you're going to see all the organizations that we collaborate with, but nothing is done alone. As I say, it takes a village, right? Impact. You will see some of our numbers of our impact both in stories, people, and our numbers. Integrity. When we started this, and Judy, my operation gal, that it was just the 2 of us at the beginning, 6 long years ago, we wanted to make sure what we said we would do, we did. If we said we were going to be somewhere at a certain time, we were there. And we only have high-quality people surrounding our organization, and I have quite a few of those here in the room, so thank you for being here. I like our trucks. Good, yeah, we do too. I knew when I started this that I wanted to have that as a rolling billboard, and Revolution Wrap has been wonderful in helping to wrap our trucks. But it was really cute because I had this little girl picked out that I found online that I have on the trucks, and she kind of became my little girl because my kids had grown and moved out of state. And when they came back with the first draft, it was a cute little blonde girl licking an ice cream cone, and I go, what did you do with my little girl? But, you know, she really catches people's attention. So as you can see, what our mission is to capture the extra food and to redistribute it, but also, and which I'll touch on in a little bit, is bringing awareness and education to food waste and hunger, because I believe you first have to bring the awareness before you can educate anyone. And basically, Saving Grace is a distribution and logistics operation. So we don't keep the food for ourselves, we're passing it out to those in need in the community through different nonprofit organizations feeding our hungry. Well, look at there, year to date through September, we've already captured over 792,000 pounds of food, and this is good, healthy, perishable food. We not only captured it, we redistributed it. Since we started, and we just had our 6th birthday, we've captured over 3.7 million pounds of food. It's amazing, huh? You know, we're just getting started. This has been the growth on how much we captured. So we started with 1 refrigerated truck, and had that for the first 2 years of this growth. And now we are up to 4 trucks that go out daily, Monday through Friday, and they leave at 6:30 in the morning. They're out capturing the food, and then they redistribute it that same afternoon to our nonprofit partners. So our food donors, which we really want to celebrate. I thought when I started this that it would be just a lot of restaurants, but I found that restaurants do tend to manage their food a lot better than I knew, unless they're having like an extra event. We do have a few restaurants, but as you can see, it's mainly our grocery stores and wholesalers, and then some of the unique ones that I never thought of, Quick Trip, QT Kitchens. They have those little fruit cups and wrapped sandwiches and salads. And they've been with us about 3 years, and they go out every night with their refrigerated truck to all their locations. There were 12 at one time, and there's more now. Take it back to the one on 130th and Q, and we get between 750 to 1,000 items a week that had been going in the trash. They just wanted a safe means to take it. But see, we offer refrigerated trucks, drivers with food handling license, and so they know it's being handled in a safe manner. So we even have a few churches and cafeterias. There are a lot of areas we can grow in each one of these. And I'll be interested to hear from all of you about ideas you have too. So here, as I was saying, we like to support and really promote the forward-thinking food donors that we have. And so here are a few of them. And here are some more. And again, we've just brought on a couple of new ones, but the Quick Trip has been fun. A lot of the Hy-Vees, they each make their own decisions, so you may have seen your own on there, you may not have, but we do go to all the Fresh Times every day. A lot of these we go to daily, some we only go to a couple of times a week, it just depends on their need. And then we have on-call, like our drivers can only go to so many places, and they each have their schedule each day, but there's always room for on-call because maybe there's a big event at the Embassy Suites, La Vista, or down at the CHI Health, keeping the right name going here, CHI Health Event Center, and they expected maybe 1,000 people. They got 800. Now they have all this extra food. One of our earlier food donors was Attitude on Foods Catering, but now Catering Creations too. They almost have competitions within their organization on how much they can capture that so it doesn't get thrown out. So again, celebrate all these, and we'll have some little bookmarks over at our table over there if you want to have one to take with you. It shows all of our food donors and food recipients. So as I mentioned on there, and since we did that video, we've added more food donors and food recipients. We now have over 58 food donors, still counting. But we do track, like I said in the video, I know our the partner down, or the organization down in Arizona, they just tracked how much pounds. But I think people can see the quality of the food when you track the types. So we were writing it on the little tablets, but we did just this year get some electric tablets for in the trucks. So we're able to do that. And then that also provides us GPS system so we can work on our routes. So here's a couple of the pictures of some of our food donors. This is down at CHI Health with all the chefs and Attitude on Foods. Just kind of give you a picture. One thing that we did find, when you get in doing something new like this, I learned that there is so much bread produced. And we have learned that, and Judy helped me at the beginning, we do not go after out after just bread, because we could fill those trucks 20 times over with bread, and you don't pay for expensive refrigerated trucks to carry bread. You can carry that in a car. We do carry a lot of bread. We do get a lot of grains, but only if we get their produce, their dairy, and their proteins. So we'll let anyone else that wants to give that, but it's so overproduced that I am working with because a lot of the places we take it, the elderly, they can't have all of that. A lot of people have diabetes, or the kids with obesity and so forth. So I'm working with Brickway Brewery here in town about creating a bread that we're going to be, a beer from the bread. And it's going to be a winter brew and a summer brew, and we're going to sell it for a small funding stream, but mainly to bring awareness on the food waste and hunger. So stay tuned. We're always looking for innovative things to do. You going to come back for some of that, Gary? Yeah, okay. So again, back to the numbers. I can read this to you, but you're seeing it. So the need is really great. So here's all this food ending in the landfill, turning into methane gas. But here's the need that we have for it. Helping our neighbors. We are now going to 43 different nonprofit organizations. And if you see, you had us going to Adams Park for their summer program. Well, their senior center that's there was getting some of that food. Now they want us to come there all the time. So now they're a long-term partner with us too. So we're going to all types of nice people that are doing great things for our community. And if they can have great healthy food for their clients and they don't have to spend all the money and go out source it, they can use a lot of the resources for all the systemic reasons of why people are in their place in the first place. So, and we just picked up Nebraska Urban Indian Health Coalition too as one of our new ones. But if you'll see here, one of our partners on here is No More Empty Pots, our good pals there. They're doing such wonderful things, remaking a lot of the food, which I'm sure you're going to have some today. So that just came fresh from some of these food donors directly down there, and now they've recreated it with their talented staff. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. I always do. And yes, and then here's some of the other locations. I found this picture to the left. Is that your left, my left? Yes. Where we first came into that Cope Christian Outreach Center, that's what the freezer looked like to the left. And when we left, that's what it looked like. And it just goes really fast. And then our friends at the Boys and Girls Club, a couple of our team went down there and got some great interviews from them. I'm kind of backing up just a little bit because I failed to say when we go out to our food donors, we have to go and recruit them and make them, bring them awareness to how safe it is for them to donate through us, and that they cannot be sued. Well, anybody can be sued, but there was the good Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act back in the 1990s. And also, I always bring up 5 points why it makes good business sense, because whenever you go to a business, you have to let them know why it's smart for them to do this. 1, it is a tax deduction. 2, it saves them on their dumpster fees. 3, it helps them with their sustainability plans. 4, it could be used as a great employee engagement. And we're already seeing that where we took out some of our flyers to tell them how much food they'd already given so they can share that with their employees. Because I guarantee you, everyone that's ever worked in the food industry or still does, they're sickened by how much food is thrown out. So if they see their employer is doing this and that they're a part of it, it really does keep them engaged. And 5, they're just helping the community once again. Sorry, I meant to do that back when I was talking about food donors. Here are some more of our partners. And again, when we pick up our food and redistribute that day, we do not warehouse a thing. They get it as fresh as we get it, and we deliver it free of charge. So it's thanks to our donors that help us to pay for our operations. A few more. Nothing like the faces. And then back to the second part of our mission about bringing the education of food waste and hunger. Have any of you seen this before? It's a food waste hierarchy. Yes, on my team. So when I got started in this, I found it, and I found it really interesting. So a big piece of this is how can we slim down how much food is going in down here to the landfill. I could just pull this off. So first, up here, reduce. You know, as we've all gotten bigger houses, we've gotten more refrigerators, more freezers, bigger pantries, and what do? Fill it all up. And then what do? Throw it all away, a lot of it away. So it's kind of helping bring more awareness to how can we each reduce in our own way. You know, not over shopping, over buying, over any of that. So this is something we all can do. And taking your doggy bags, your leftovers home and eating it. Next up is feed people. There are a lot of people, including some others here from Dr. D's and so forth, Benson Plant Rescue, that are doing this. Our friends at No More Empty Pots, a lot of us. But this is where Saving Grace fits in trying to help a lot of our partners feed people. And then next, livestock. Well, it doesn't mean just pig farmers, you know, it could be any kind of farmers, including, as talking to our guest here, chicken farmers. So if it's gone past the point that we can take it for people, then we should, and we're trying to make partnerships with different people through here. So farmers. Next is composting or the renewable energies. And I know they're still working a lot on that. There is some of that renewable energies, but I've heard it's still pretty costly, but I think we're going that way. But compost, and I know Hillside Solutions, who works here at Metro, but we've also been working with them too on how we can partner more. And then the very little bit, this should be skinnier, shouldn't it? Should be going to our landfills. So that's part of the awareness and education that we're trying to do with that. In the picture here, part of that is we've always been a part of Earth Day every spring. I don't know if any of you gone to Elmwood Park. And since the beginning, before I had a truck or anything, I just had a table and some logos and was there, and that was it. You know, it was all in theory, and, you know, so, and here we are now, and we just won the Earth Day, the nonprofit environmental award from Earth Day this year, so we're proud of that, and a couple of my team members. So the other part of building awareness and education is we have these food for thought breakfasts, and this last year we had Ann Curry, she's in that top picture, and she did a talk on labeling because that is a really confusing piece for a lot of people. In the labeling, more than 80% of Americans throw out food when it's close or past to stamp to date. Previous surveys have found often that it's because they misread the label. So there's a few people in Congress that are trying to get some things worked out to simplify those labels, to distinguish between quality and safety, because everybody thinks it's safety, and it's still good. And then Melissa Sherlock, she was here about plant-based eating, and then next down is our friend with Brent from Hillside Solutions. They each came and did talks on different days. And back to that was pretty cool, this quick story on that. I got a call one day, all my teams heard this, pulling into my parking lot, and I get a lot of phone calls on my phone and didn't know it, so I just let it go to voicemail. When I listened, it said, "This is Special Agent so-and-so from the FBI. Would you give me a call?" Oh, sure. So it was pretty cool when they said, "Hey, you've been nominated for, the Director's Leadership Award." Didn't know that existed. Did anyone else? It's been going on since the 90s, where they pick people from different communities, and ours is It's Nebraska and Iowa. So they submitted it out to DC, and they did an award here and then flew me out to DC to accept that with 50 some others throughout the community. So it put Saving Grace's name out there in the AP wire, so being that young was pretty special. And it shows Omaha is innovative and progressive, right? And then here's a picture of our 4 trucks, 5 drivers, because we needed to add an extra driver to help on heavy load days. He's a floater. And then when our driver, if one's sick or is out on vacation, those trucks still go out, because what did I say at the beginning? If we say we're going to be there, we're going to be there. We just had our 6th birthday party at Dante. It was awesome, and we did have some of our beer there. And so if you were there and weren't there and missed it, you'll want to pay attention to when we kick it off. So set some really strong goals this next year. I don't know where I was, because I kind of did almost a 40-some% increase, but I know we'll meet over 1 million pounds. And part of it is I thought we were going to have our 4th truck at the beginning of the year, and we got it in April, but we're still doing strong. As you could see, we had, just under 800,000 by September. So this is what we need from you to help lead our movement on no food waste. And I'll give you a quick example how that happens. When we first started, I think I mentioned Embassy Suites La Vista. We went out there shortly after we started and said, hey, would you donate your excess food? No, we can't do that. Same old, same old. And about a year later, they gave us a call, and they said, we have more and more people saying they would not sign a contract unless you were donating your excess food. Would you please come back? That's the movement we're trying to have happen, and that's a movement you can help us with. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Really appreciated and enjoyed that presentation. It was great learning more about Saving Grace. And if you'd like to ask more questions, please note that they do have a table over there as well, so that's another opportunity for you to ask questions for Saving Grace Rescue. So let me please introduce our next speaker. It is Gary Oppenheimer, which I'm sure you have probably deduced is the gentleman sitting here on my left. Gary Oppenheimer is the founder and executive director of AmpleHarvest.org. Aware of the increasing hunger problem in 2009, and after seeing the amount of wasted food in the community garden as well as other gardens around the country, Gary created AmpleHarvest.org, a nationwide program enabling America's 42 million homes and community gardeners to donate their excess bounty to thousands of food pantries nationwide. A year after founding AmpleHarvest.org, Gary was named a CNN hero, and he was introduced on the Larry King Live show and had an interview with CNN anchor Ali Velshi. AmpleHarvest.org also worked closely with former First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move initiative. Gary has also been named a World Food Prize nominee, is a James Beard Foundation Food Waste Advisory Board member, and won the Russell Berry Foundation's Making a Difference Award. Gary resides in the mountains of northern New Jersey. He is a master gardener, Rutgers environmental steward, former community gardener, director, environmental commissioner in northern New Jersey, an avid gardener and long-distance cyclist. He also enjoys boating, hiking, farming, and attacking challenges of all sorts. He is a firm believer in the notion that to do the impossible, you must first believe it isn't. Please welcome me in joining Gary. There we go.
Yeah. I want to thank you, first of all, Beth, thank you. It was a great talk. Thank you very much. It's not too loud, is it? All right. I'm not here. Okay. I'm going to ask everybody to take out your phones later, so it's okay. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here at Metropolitan Community College. I'm thrilled that the Hubbard Foundation is inviting me to come out, so thank you very much. And I also want to give a shout out to the sound folks in the back. You guys have been amazing, so thank you very, very much. Yeah, and you deserve it. And we'll hope the technology is going to continue to work just great. Yes, it does. So, Beth and I did not collaborate on our presentations, but you're going to see an overlap in some places between what she's talked about and shown and what I'm talking about, which just shows that what she's talking about is super important. All right, I got it. I got it figured out. Okay, so we're going to be, thank you, that's my bad. I apologize. It's not you guys. See, they were correct. This is the title slide. So we're going to walk you through what we're going to be talking about and then take you into there. So the first, we're going to talk about food waste, a bit more depth than Beth had talked about. I'm then going to talk about a program that's 10 years old that I founded in May of '09 called ampleharvest.org, which is going to be a different piece of food waste. We're then going to be talking about a different program tackling food waste from an entirely different perspective, dealing with the faith community. Then from there, I want to talk a little bit about what you and I can be doing to end the waste of food. But to start with, now, you may be laughing a bit, but my wife is a firm believer in the idea of dessert first because you never know. So, and also I'm a believer in the idea that impact should precede process. You should see where we're going to, and then we're going to get you there. So I decided to show you this video and to let you see, this is one of many news stories that's been out about ampleharvest.org. I wanted you to see this because Beth's organization is running around critically getting food that's been left over from stores and restaurants and whatever. We've taken entirely a different approach, going after food that up to now actually nobody's actually looked at. There we go. So let's take a quick look at food waste, and there'll be a little bit of repetition from Beth's and some different, but I want to reframe it because food waste does sound like pig slop and sounds like something unappealing. But the reality is we should be thinking about it as the waste of food. This is stuff you would want to eat, you would have eaten, but for some reason it didn't get consumed. This picture by Bill Marsh, New York Times, 2008, was a game changer for me. It represents, it's a photograph shaped in the map of the US, and it represents the amount of food lost by a family of 4 in a month. That's about a pound a person a day. This got me thinking. Now, admittedly, I also grew up with my grandmother saying, finish what's on your plate, kids are starving in Europe. But so there have been all these pieces in my life, but this was a very critical tipping point for me. And interestingly, you use this is the Rose Bowl. Now, Jonathan Bloom, who's a leading expert on food waste here in America, when he wrote his book, American Wasteland, used the metaphor of we could fill the Rose Bowl every day with food waste. About 2 months ago, I had a call with the EPA for the faith program that we're going to be talking about, and they said, we're not sure about this food waste thing because we have no metrics to describe that. So I got on the phone with John, and I said, Jonathan, is this food waste connection, is the Rose Bowl still filled up every day with the waste of food? And he said, not really. When he did the computations, when he wrote the book more than a decade ago, it was nearly 2 Rose Bowls a day already back then, and it has since gotten worse. So today we are filling more than 2 Rose Bowls a day, which is around the 700 stadiums that Beth had talked about. This is the amount of food that we Americans are throwing away, wasting, a missed opportunity on a daily basis, year after year after year. So, you've heard these numbers. 40% of the food in America is not consumed. 50% of the produce in America is not consumed, which means, by the way, that since half our produce comes from California, and California is already sucking the ground dry in water, we're really wasting literally 12.5% of California's water, and they can't afford it. Much of the farmland is not consumed. But again, we're really down to about a pound a person a day in the waste of food. And this is happening all over the place. It's in your town dump. This is easy to see. It's happening. How many of you go apple picking? And maybe, I don't know how big it is out here in the mid, okay. Where I live in northern Jersey, apple picking is really big. And one of the things is no matter what you do, you go to a farm, you go apple picking, and no matter how many apples are on the ground, you only feel good picking an apple out of a tree. The apples on the ground may have fallen 2 minutes ago. They're perfectly edible, they're perfectly wholesome, they're great, and you're not going to pick them up. There's a component of food waste that we all have, even those of us in the fight. And so this is a typical example of the waste of food. This is behind your supermarket. And this is not because the food is bad. but it's because the next shipment of food came in and they have to do something with it. And while you have wonderful rescue organizations in many, but not all communities that are rescuing the food, much of it still goes out. And as Beth said, many of them, it's some lawyer saying, you can't do that because they're ignoring the Emerson Food Safety Act. But we all have a piece in this also. I mean, we all have portion sizes that are too big. Before I came here, I went to Potbelly's near here to get lunch, and I wanted a salad, and I was perfectly happy with their small salad. And they said, we can't give you, it has to be the big one. You can only get the small one if you also get a sandwich of soup to go with it. They forced me into a food waste scenario. Thank you for the props. Project Drawdown, it is an amazing book. It's been out now about a year, and it looks at the top solutions the world can use to reduce the climate change. Number 3 out of all of the options is to reduce the waste of food. Why? The food we throw away when it goes to a landfill, pound for pound, breaks down into methane, which pound for pound is the equivalent of between 20 and 30 pounds of CO2 in the atmosphere. So when we're throwing away billions of pounds of food, we're throwing billions of pounds of climate change gas into the air. So from the beginning of the food waste issue, many have looked at it. It's the USDA, the EPA, ReFed, NRDC, many, but there's been one thing that hasn't been looked at. So I have a question by show of hands. How many of you are gardeners or know gardeners or live with a gardener? Look around for a minute how many hands are up. Keep your hands up just for a minute, please, just so everybody can see. Statistically, gardeners are 35% of America, and this room is even a higher percent. Nobody ever thought about the garden food waste. You already had your hands up. I skipped the slide. So it's 42 million gardeners. That's 35% of all households, a significant percentage of urban. This is not just out in the burbs in rural America. And it's rapidly growing, particularly with millennials. And again, I want to underscore, this is not about farmers. This is about people who simply like to garden, tomatoes, zucchini, or what have you. And they have a place in their backyard or wherever they might be in a community garden. It might be in a rooftop garden. It might be in any setting in which they're gardening. We're all guilty of largely the same thing. We grow too much food. And I got to tell you personally, I live in northern New Jersey. Like here, you have pretty nasty winters. And by late February, you're really getting pretty itchy to start getting out there. And the ground's not ready, but you start planting indoors. You'll see pictures in a minute of what it looks like. And we plant more than we can use. And to make matters worse, all of the plants, like the tomatoes, don't all ripen through the year. They all ripen in the same, like 6 to 8 weeks. So you're swamped with the food. So this is me, not in a jacket, but this is me in my garden. And that's my dining table around this time in February. And every one of those cups that you see there is a seedling that's going to be put into the ground. This is what my dining table looks like. We don't eat in the dining room for a while in late winter. This is what my kitchen and dining room and everything looks like when the harvest starts. And these are daily harvests in my garden. And I am a master gardener, but there are gardeners who are far more prolific than me, and there are people who have soil far better than I do. Collectively, the average gardener is growing in excess of 400 pounds of excess food per year. And that might be mind-boggling if your gardening is only giving you 2 tomatoes in a year, but for many of us, it's great. And there are many people who just have the 2 tomatoes or 1 zucchini, and you're happy, and that's great. But the bulk of the gardeners are growing a lot of food, and that's me. So you're going to be asking the question, well, how much garden waste is there? And it's a reasonable question, because remember I told you that everybody has studied farm-to-table garden loss, food loss, and it's it's in the many, many billions of pounds. But nobody ever walked into your backyard and said, are you growing anything? Are you wasting what you're growing? How much are you growing? It's, nobody's ever done that. The National Gardening Association, by the way, does survey gardeners across America, and they came up with the numbers of 42 million gardeners, 35% of the population. Interestingly, they don't look at what you're growing and how much you're growing and how much you're wasting. So somebody had to do it. So ampleharvest.org did. Starting in 2015 and then in 2016, we asked 2,500 gardeners across America a bunch of questions. What do you grow? How much do you grow? How much more food do you grow than you could use, preserve, or share with friends? Would you donate it if you could? Would you grow more if you could? And many other questions. The data was fascinating, and there was a lot of data. So we learned that 95% of the people who garden grow food. Now, the other 5% are just growing ornamentals, flowers, but the majority, and even people who grow flowers also grow food. Everybody grows tomatoes. One person admitting to growing marijuana, I have to tell you, I don't remember if their data stayed in our data sets or not, but everybody grows tomatoes, and then you got all these other things that people grow. Would you donate food if you knew a local food pantry would accept it? And this is an important question because not only is the issue of how much food is there, but what would you as an individual do with it if you had the opportunity? Four out of 5 gardeners said, yes, if I knew I could donate food and there was a place to which I would donate it, I'd be eager to donate it. By the way, in principle, this is not any different from you with old clothing. When you don't want it anymore, you don't throw it away. You're a good person. You take it to a thrift shop. You know, because that's what your parents told you to do, and you know there's a thrift shop in the town. Same principle of just being good. Would you deliberately grow more food if you knew you could donate it? This is no longer a food waste question. This is actually outright charity now. Because I don't know about you, but I've never used all the tomato seeds in the packet because they may give you 25, 30 seeds and only want 10 plants. Many people would deliberately grow more. Where are you located? That urban is a significant percentage of the population and rapidly growing. In New York, at least, I'm sure many other parts of the country, rooftop gardening is going gangbusters. One of the largest farms in southern New York is in a rooftop in Brooklyn. It's acres large. So we gathered up all of this information. And then our friends at Cisco Systems took the numbers and came back with data that just stunned me. I knew there was a lot of food. I knew that there was a lot of need for a program, but I just didn't understand the scope and the magnitude. So rather than throw big numbers at you, lots and lots of numbers, I'll just throw some big ones at you. Collectively, the gardeners of America are growing 11. By the way, all this is online. If you want to see ampleharvest.org/study, it's all publicly available. 11 billion pounds of food. That's food that we can't use or preserve or share with friends. The food itself would be worth $18 billion if they were farmers, was retail value. $115 impact on the nation's healthcare costs. If people across America had that food, instead of it being thrown away, the value that would be derived from their improved health would be the equivalent of $115 billion. But the big number is that the gardeners of America grow enough excess food to feed 28 million hungry people. Now, it's not that, you have to bear in mind that unlike farms where we have millions of farms, in gardening, we have 42 million. It's a huge multiplier effect. So, May of 2009, I launched a program called ampleharvest.org, and that is its real name, it's also the URL. And the idea of it was, well, to tackle the issue of the fact that we have 42 million people, and this is a real gardener. She's also a roller derby person, but people like her who garden. And, as you saw in Beth's presentation, we have 42 million people who go to food pantries across America, and typically they go to a pantry that's only got processed food, no fresh food. Here's the kicker. The people who are gardening and the people in the community who need the food are neighbors. They live side by side. They're not on the other side of the railroad tracks type of stuff. These are our neighbors. This could be somebody in this room who maybe lost a job, fell in economic hard times, and you had to go to a food pantry for a while. The reality is the people who have more food than they can use and the people who need the food are living side by side in the community. And I saw this as an amazing opportunity for America. Now, my background's in technology. I was one of the early geeks in computers back in the 70s. I did a prototype email system in 86 or 87. I invented the electronic newsletter, but I can promise you I did not invent spam. That was somebody else. So my background's in technology. And I had figured out that there was a thing that I could bring these two things together, these two people together, not directly but indirectly. And the result was ampleharvest.org. Now, to take this to the next step, I have to explain a little bit of the architecture of the food bank system and of the food system in America. So you've all heard of Feeding America. It's the center of the food bank network in the country. And connected to that are around 200 food banks. Now, except for Oregon and Washington, food banks are not the place where a hungry family goes. Food bank's a big warehouse, and that's a regional collector of food and redistributor of food. And connected to the food bank are food pantries, soup kitchens, battered women's shelters. That's where hungry families go. So that's the architecture. And if you look at the presentation there, you're going to see that the food would typically go to the food bank, sit there for days or weeks, get to a food pantry, and then go to hungry families. The problem is that works just great for jars and cans and boxes, but it does not work for fresh food. You can't have lettuce or tomatoes sitting on shelves for weeks. It doesn't work. And that choke point was the fundamental problem that I saw. So the result is that people like Sean, real gardener, Texas, was sending his excess food into a compost pile because he wasn't allowed to donate the food. So when you're going to solve a problem, you first have to figure out what the real problem is. And I looked at this as not a food problem. I saw it very, very differently. For example, have any of you gone down the street and seen a sign like this? I don't think so. And the reason is the sign doesn't exist. You can't find the food pantry. There's no sign outside saying there's a food pantry out there. Now, mind you, things are beginning to change a little bit with the internet, but back 10 years ago, we were still in the Yellow Pages days, and Google was a much smaller than it is now, but you didn't know where a food pantry was. But the other problem, you have to get close, by the way, to see the food pantry. You have to get that close. But the other problem is the food drives themselves that we've all gone to and probably almost all of us have donated to. We've all been given the same admonition: jars, cans, boxes, no fresh food. We gardeners have been told your fresh food is not welcome. And the reason it wasn't welcome is because that time process from the food bank to the food pantry, they could only take the processed food. So what I had realized was that fundamentally the problem that we were dealing with and the problem that had to be tackled was misinformation and missing information. The misinformation was jars, cans, boxes, no fresh food. The missing information was to where can I donate it and when can I donate it. This was an information problem. This was not a food problem. The food was the victim of the information problem. So in March of '09, I woke up and I had an epiphany. And this was while I was working as a director of a community garden. I realized this is solvable. And I sat down at my computer and mapped out in a PowerPoint presentation over a 4-hour session what I visualized a solution could look like. And it turned out I nailed it. What I realized was I needed to tell people, yes, you could donate food. I needed to build a search engine that enabled them to donate the food and then get out of their way. And the result was that once the gardener knew that she could donate the food, and I say she because 70% of gardeners in America are women 35 to 85 years old, even though Sean isn't a she. But once you knew that you could donate food and to where, the problem of the waste of food from your garden was permanently solved. And the lack of fresh food in America's food pantries was permanently solved. Because once you knew that you could donate the food and to where, you could do that for the rest of your gardening life. So I built ampleharvest.org with the assistance of 2 volunteers, one of whom was a woman who I have never met, and she herself lived in Section 8 housing. She simply said, I'm in, I'm doing this with you. So the 3 of us built this, and in 7 weeks later, ampleharvest.org was rolled out. I should say it happened that fast because no lawyers were involved, so there's a lesson for anybody who wants to. I hope I'm not insulting any lawyers here. But that's how it all worked. So the idea was a database of food pantries in which the pantries themselves sign up. By the way, we're not just combing information. Pantries come and they actually sign up, say, we want the food. They put in their information, so you're the gardener, you put in, I live here, a list of the pantries nearest you come up with the information on a map and a listing, then you put in, you pick the one you want, then up comes the information that you need to donate the food. There's one magical piece of information in here that I should add that it dawned on me while we were doing this process, and that is date and time of donation. If a food pantry is opened only 1 day a week, Sundays, and you show up on Monday, that food has to sit there for a week before anybody's going to see it, and it's not good. But what if you were told, we would like to have you come on a Sunday morning before noon, because we distribute the food on Sundays starting at noon. The result is you now know when to harvest the food, Sunday morning, Saturday night, you donate the food, it's sitting on a table for a little while, and then your hungry neighbors come in later that day to pick it up and it goes home. They're getting food fresher than you and I can get in the supermarket, and by the way, there's an ethical element in here because it's plausible, and I say neighbors, I mean literally, your next door neighbor may be the person eating the food. It would be bad for you to show up with food while they're getting it. You're embarrassed, they're humiliated. This separates the two of you by an element of time. There's anonymity in there, which I thought was really important. So this is what it looked like when food started coming in to food pantries. So it was launched in May of '09, as I said. The first pantry signed up in New Jersey, because that's where I live. And then this is what happened. Now, if I have the number that I wrote down before I came up, here we go. The current number, as of when we started this afternoon, was 8,556 food pantries in all 50 states in America are part of ampleharvest.org. That's a quarter of all the food pantries in America. The most recent one was around 11 a.m. this morning in Floyd, Virginia. This is a real-time growth of an opportunity to reduce food waste and to basically nourish America. So what happens is after ampleharvest.org gets launched, I start getting asked questions about the food, and I had to start telling people that this was, well, we had to discuss the question a little differently. So keeping this map in your mind for a minute. Oop, pushed the wrong button. There we go. That's what I wanted. I want you to think about how it works. So we're going to put one pin on the map here in Omaha, and we're going to call that a food pantry. Imagine a circle around that food pantry, 9 miles, 20-minute drive in most places. I thought 20 minutes is a reasonable distance gardeners would be willing to drive to donate food. They're not going to drive 2 hours. It's not worth the time or the gas. Think of this 250 square miles funnel of food coming into food pantries. All right? The question isn't how much food did people get, how much food did the pantries get. The real question, I thought, was how much food was no longer being wasted. This is a supply-side problem. The demand side at the pantries are the beneficiaries, but the ultimate is the supply side. Now, by the way, this is the real map of what we currently have in Omaha, so it wasn't one pin. We have a bunch of pantries, and there are probably many more we have to work at getting, and you folks may be able to help us with that. So what happened next was this.
Millions of hungry Americans rely on food pantries to eat.
I'm sorry, Larry's sync
But
wasn't
often that means a diet of canned and processed food. So when this week's CNN hero saw that local pantries were lacking fresh produce, he came up with a simple way to help. Found it in his own backyard. Watch.
Pancake mix and syrup.
The system we have in America is you donate canned goods or dry goods to a food bank. Fresh produce is almost never available. Horseradish. I had an idea about how to not waste food. We're having an ample harvest, and the very least we can do is give it to people who need it.
They'll be enjoying this tomorrow at the pantry.
Ampleharvest.org enables people who grow food in home gardens to easily find a local food pantry to donate their excess produce to.
It's a nice big one. We didn't know what doors to knock on, but now that Gary has got this wonderful program, there's some rhubarb. Taking it to one of the pantries really is a good way to share with Ample Harvest.
Ampleharvest.org gives them the ability to easily get that food to somebody who genuinely really needs it.
It smells good. Yeah.
You're not only doing good, you're feeling great about it.
It was pretty cool, I have to say. So this is an example, by the way, of a donation food from urban Bridgeport, Connecticut. As I said, this is not just about the burbs or rural America. Florida and in other places, food that just comes into the system. This is what it looks like at a food pantry when it's laid on a table for hungry families to pick up and to go home. So in short, what I did is a program that bypassed the choke point at the food banks and allowed the food to flow directly to the food pantry. From millions of gardeners to thousands of food pantries to benefit millions of hungry people. This is what happens when America stops wasting food. Now, remember this map of a moment ago. At a certain point, this is what happened.
The response to this initiative has been overwhelming. I mean, all kinds of faith communities have been stepping up. Muslim community leaders are hosting sports tournaments to encourage young people to get active. The Jewish Community Centers Association is working with JCCs around the country to grow gardens and to get fresh food in underserved areas. And they're creating early child wellness programs. Groups like the National Council of Churches have joined with an organization called Ample Harvest to help gardeners donate fresh produce to 4,700 of their local food pantries.
So that map, one of the numbers that is important in this whole food sphere is that 70% of food pantries are in a house of worship. So this makes a natural partnership between a food waste program like AmpleHarvest.org and the faith community of all faiths. So in 2016, we launched a program called Food Waste Weekend. I'm going to just ask a question, and you can raise your hands if you want. For those of you who belong to any house of worship of any faith, I'm sure your faith leader has spoken to you about feeding the hungry. Yes? Raise your hands if yes. Okay, good number. So this is what my hair often looks like when it's not too good. Typically what happens when food waste advocates are speaking to people out in the public, the majority of the people are focused on other things. They're trying to pay their bills. They're trying to do all sorts of other things. They're not hearing us. But I realized that once a week, people go to a house of worship and listen to their faith leader. Once a week, there's an opportunity to have their undivided attention, and we could build on that. We could, since we're already working with the faith community, we could better get to the people of faith. We created a program that's called Food Waste Weekend, and the idea was for the Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Unitarian, and non-sectarian faith community, like secular, well, to get involved in food waste. We created a sermon, a secular sermon, or what I like to tell people is a faithy sounding but faithless sermon. And that was it. It talked about food waste, it talked about climate change, and then we had it translated into Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and Unitarian. Then we went to the clergy of all faiths across America and increasingly globally, and we said, we got a program for you. You can learn about food waste from all the experts. We'll give you everything you need. We're then going to give you a sermon written in your own faith tradition, and we're going to give you calls to action, like portion sizes and date labeling, for example. And then we're going to encourage you to give the sermon. We're going to give you all the other material you need. Do a sermon on food waste as part of your regular service all in the same weekend, so that on Friday, imams, Saturday, rabbis, Sunday, priests and ministers would actually be talking about the same issue, which, by the way, is not only then talking about food waste, but to have these different faiths all talking about the same thing at the same time is great in a very divisive time in America. It sends a really good message. So that instead of somebody like me just speaking and being heard by a small number of people, you have a faith leader being heard by everybody in their congregation. That was Food Waste Weekend. So it was built as a program to help clergy. This year we made a variant of it to help people of faith. In other words, people who don't go to house of worship, for example, that they could go in. And all this is available at foodwasteweekend.org. It's one of our education programs. So I'm going to quickly, very quickly, because I know my time is running short, tell you what these calls to actions were so you could see them. The first one, of course, is donate garden produce. The second one was learn how to store your fruits and vegetables a lot better, and so they don't get wasted. And one hint is don't let them get out of sight in your refrigerator. If they do, you'll never see them again. Keep a food log. Keep track of what you're wasting. Learn more, get involved, learn about the issue of the waste of food itself. Learn about deep dive. Beth was talking about that. I want to give you one quick example. For those of you who have honey at home, go look at the bottom. There's an expiration date on it. Honey has a 20,000-year shelf life. This is not about the safety of anything. This is about time to buy some more. Share with other people what you learn about food waste. You saw those plates I showed you, portion size. Take only what you need, serve less, go back for seconds if you want it. That's a huge benefit both to the waste of food and, frankly, all of our own wastes. Go shopping with a shopping list so you don't buy more than you need. And And donate food when you move. There's a wonderful program, by the way, called Move for Hunger, which works with moving companies around the world. So when you leave the house, you buy a new house, and you take the, the furniture, the clothing, the dog, and maybe the kids, but you leave the food behind. The moving company will take the food and get it donated for you. This is not something you can do alone. This is something that I learned requires engaging with other people, telling people, reaching out to them, and having them join you in the effort. And so this is where your involvement comes in. We've gotten 25% of the pantries in America on ampleharvest.org. We have 75% more to go, and we could use your help with that. But there are other ways that you can help. Innovative programs struggle with the support that they need to do their work. We don't fit conventional structures in terms of how we approach a problem. People like to feed hungry people. My answer is we like to get hungry people fed. It's a different way of viewing it. This is a social program, not a food program. The food is the beneficiary of it. And lastly, the idea of having hunger and environment merged together is something that's relatively new. So finding the people, the enterprises, the businesses that want to help support a program like this is super critical. This is where I'm going to ask all of you if you would please take out your phones for a minute. And I'd love, you can either, if you can do a QR code, that's great. If you can't, go to ampleharvest.org/me, M-E. We'd love to know who you are. We'd love to stay in touch. I promise you none of your information is going to be shared with anybody else. But it allows us to remain engaged, to hear from you as to your ideas, and to have you basically to have you part of this larger effort. So I'll keep that up just there for another moment. All right, so I'm going to move on from there. So ways that you can get involved. Got it. Thank you. Look at different ways in your life that you can reduce the waste of food. And by the way, again, what Beth talked about, where a hotel got beaten up by its customers. When you go into a restaurant that serves you too much, when you're going to an event that's served, tell them how you feel, because that makes a difference, and they'll start to corporately behave differently and behave better. And just for the record, the Emerson Food Safety Act says that if food is given to a nonprofit, the donor is indemnified, except for gross negligence. Anything a lawyer says saying we can't do this is just total nonsense. Urge your local food pantry, wherever you live, to join ampleharvest.org. It's four things they need to know. It's free, they don't need refrigeration, they don't need storage, and it's free. Say the free part twice. That's really super important to them. Tell your gardening friends in all 50 states about this. We're running out of the gardening season now, but they're going to start planting in a few months as the winter winds down. I'm not even thinking about winter yet, but yeah. Let more and more people know about ampleharvest.org. You can support us with a sign up, making donations however you feel is comfortable for you. We work with corporations, businesses to sponsor an entire state. My shirt that you can't see under here actually says Virtual Roots. This is where an enterprise can have their name on all the food pantries in a state. And we actually have a program we're rolling out right now. We do it every year, Centerpieces for Pantries. This is, and I'm asking you, as you get ready for your Thanksgiving dinner, your Christmas dinner, what have you, for those of you who would normally put out arrangements of flowers and stuff on your dinner table, which will just then get moved out of the way so you can talk to the people across from you, put out an arrangement of whole fruits and vegetables instead. Whether you grew it or you bought it's irrelevant. Don't cut, don't pierce, don't slice, just the whole stuff. Whatever is pretty, that's your centerpiece. Then you can donate that the next day to a food pantry. So that food can grace your table one day and feed another family the next. It's environmentally better than flying flowers from South America, and it's better nutritionally for the community, and you're also making a statement to the people that you're sharing your event with. You can learn more at ampleharvest.org/local. Jen Chapin is Harry Chapin's daughter, and this is her description of us. It's something beautifully simple and simply beautiful. I was very, very moved by that. So this is the end of my presentation, but I'm going to throw an option at you because we next go to a break, and then we come back for Q&A. I was supposed to do a colloquium before this event. I donate a colloquium to colleges and universities when I'm invited out to speak, and this is usually when I meet with students, and I tell them some of the ideas of what they can do to improve the world based on what I learned, both lessons and mistakes. And so we have a few minutes, so I'm going to ask by a show of hands. We have two choices. We can go to the break, or if you want to give me 5 minutes to learn about the theory of change behind ampleharvest.org, just raise your hand if you want to have that. And if we, others will go to the break. So who wants to see the, a few more slides or not? That's a yes. Okay, this will be quick. So the theory of change behind ampleharvest.org, and this can be applied to many other nonprofits, by the way, not many other problems, is, as I said, first you have to find and solve problems. I don't believe in feeding people. I believe in fixing systems so that people aren't hungry anymore, for example. So the change occurs when there's a systemic and sustained change that enables people to do what they always want to do. Gardeners always wanted to donate their food but couldn't. You enable them to donate it, and the problem is solved. Faith leaders have been talking about feeding the hungry, but never thought about food waste, even though it's in the scriptures. Give them what they need, and the problem is solved. This is how I believe you can actually do it. So to affect change in whatever endeavor, whatever problem you're trying to solve, is number one, figure out what the real problem is. I discovered this was misinformation and missing information in terms of the gardeners. Find the people who already care about the issue. Give them more information. Beth alluded to that already. Enable them to do that. Give them the tools, and I find that doing it online is best because it can scale all over the place. And then get out of their way. But the last thing I think is make it scalable where you can. If you can do something that works in any community, in every community, you accomplish the greatest potential there. So this is the theory of change that brought ampleharvest.org. And the reason to do it this way, particularly the scaling stuff, is by scaling, you eliminate duplication. You don't have the same program replicated in many communities across the country. The same mistakes are not repeated. The same lessons you've learned can be applied every place else. And it's much, much more efficient to scale. And it assures you of sustained impact. So the question is, are you really solving a problem just reacting to it? Are you solving it the right way? Or maybe are you looking at solving the wrong problem? And these are questions you need to ask yourself before you start attacking a problem. So I want to thank you all very, very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you. And again, I appreciate the foundations inviting me and the college inviting me. And we're both going to be here for questions after the break. So thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our Q&A tonight. So this first question is actually for the both of you. Among prospective donors, what is the most common reason for saying no? No, I don't want to donate. No, this isn't right for me.
Hello. Food or money donation?
Good clarification. I believe it's food.
I don't think gardeners have ever said, I'm not going to do it. Unless, well, no, I'm going to stand corrected. There is an issue. Transportation. You may be a gardener, you've been gardening your whole life, you have a very prolific garden, but you're no longer driving, for example. How are you going to get to food to a food pantry if you're not driving? That's a real problem. Not with the majority, but with a significant number of people. I actually reached out to both Lyft and to Uber and have not heard back, because I'd love to have a partnership like one of those companies to say, for a discounted rate, we'll take the garden food, or we'll take the garden food and the gardener to the food pantry. So that piece of it's not that I won't donate, it's I'm unable to donate, but if I had the opportunity, I would.
You need a saving grace. We go to a lot of different church organizations that have big gardens during the season, and then they have their pantry for their church people that on Sunday, and then on Monday morning we pick up the excess. So I think just finding if there's a food rescue, because a lot of it's not a production problem, it's a distribution as always. With Saving Grace, ours is probably with especially grocery stores. We have quite a few, the ones that have local permission, or they're from locally here, but we always hear, well, corporate says no, well, corporate says no. So, or we're already donating to the food bank. Well, that's a different thing than what we're going after, and there's so much more that we could be getting. So it's getting to corporate, and we've done that in a few instances, but we need to do it more.
let me just follow up on one thing. She was absolutely right. A saving grace would be great. The problem is we're in 4,000 communities across America, and there's one saving grace. But there's also programs across America like this, but in the vast majority of America, that's not there yet. And so that can, for most of the gardens, would continue to be a problem.
Great, thank you. We do appreciate what you're both doing for donated food, but can you give your top two examples or education points on how folks can reduce their food waste in their homes? So reaching that first part of the food waste hierarchy to reduce in the home. You have a top two.
You want to go first?
Well, it's not bringing it into the home unless you have plans to eat it. I think you alluded to that too, Gary. Making your list and staying with it is probably the biggest one. And it's probably learning how to package your food better too, so it could store longer. And again, having it where you know what's there.
I'm going to give you an unpopular answer. And I know it's unpopular because I've shared this with a bunch of my female friends and not one of them likes it. Put a foam block or something, or even empty milk carton in the back of the top shelf of your refrigerator. When you put food in the refrigerator, it's there, you see it, you're going to use it. And the next time you go shopping, the food that was in the refrigerator gets pushed back a little bit with the new food that comes in. And the food that's out of sight is no longer visible, and that's left, and it goes further and further back and eventually gets thrown away because out of sight, out of mind. And my thinking was, if you put a block of something in the back so there's no space to push stuff back in the top shelf, that problem tends to go away. It's not a very popular answer, but mechanically would work. If the food is in sight, I think you're more likely to eat it. You're not going to buy food that you already have. And the second one, I'm a firm believer in portion sizes, seriously. Dinner plates have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Smaller portions are simply better for you, and the food you throw away is actually costing you a fortune. I mean, the typical family is spending $2,000+ a year on the food that they throw away. So smaller portion sizes reduces the waste of food. It's healthier for you, and that's easy, and nobody objects to that. So I would simply tell people to buy smaller plates, or maybe serve dinner not on a full dinner plate, but on the next step down, and see if that helps.
Great. So the next question has to do with when the food gets to a home. So something's been donated, someone comes and pick it up. But can you talk a little bit about education for the folks once they have that food? What kind of efforts do you recommend or are currently happening to make sure that folks know how to cook what they receive?
Well, I know some of our schools, especially inner city schools, they're doing some cooking classes there. We also had Cooking Matters here in town that they were going out. But I think there needs to be a lot more on that, especially if it's produce or something that they're not used to. So, yeah, a lot of that could step up.
Let me start by saying...
Oh, and No More Empty Pots, I'm sorry. No More Empty Pots does that too.
Bread.org is a great organization, and they have programs to send chefs to food pantries and help people learn to cook. But in the space that we're in, which is fresh food, and I can tell you because I grow a lot of my own stuff, there's almost nothing that you grow that you can't eat raw. Yeah, you have to cook potatoes and a few other things, but much of the stuff you eat raw, there's no cooking involved. There's no how to prepare it. You simply eat it. I mean, that's what most of you humans did for millennia. So with fresh food, there's not that much, I think, that needs to be done. Now, even if there is something that needs to be done, it's not our mission. And I was just talking to somebody else here a little bit about that. We don't tell people how to cook, and we don't tell people how to grow. There are other wonderful organizations doing both. Our very narrow focus is on helping the gardeners get connected to the pantries and opening that floodgate of food. So, but I will say that if people don't know what to do, my answer to most of them is ask your grandmother. She knows, and she'll tell you how. And see, I'm being very serious about this. Ask somebody in your family who's been around a bit longer. They'll tell you what to do with the food.
Beth, this next question is just for you. Do you sort the different types of food before you deliver?
We do not. Well, our drivers know what each of the nonprofits could use. So when a nonprofit applies, We go out and look to see what type of facilities they have. Are they a pantry? Do they feed in-house? Do they have refrigeration? Do they have freezers? Because we get both fresh and we get prepared food. So we're matching the right food to the right place. So the drivers will separate. They don't necessarily sort totally, but they do separate to the different areas for where they know they're going. We're basically a food match.
And this next question is for both of you. To what extent have you worked with farmers directly or like big farms, kind of agricultural, larger scale?
Let me start with that first because it's a short answer. Pretty much none. Our focus is the gardener. It's somebody with a backyard garden. Having said that, we've had occasions where a farmer calls up and says, I have all this food, the price dropped or I can't harvest. May I use you to find a food pantry? The answer is yes. But if they say, I've got this food and you're welcome to it, we don't do that. They should reach out to a gleaning program, Society of St. Andrews, for example, or many others, who will send volunteers. That's not the work that we do. I'm trying to simply reach the one piece of the food system in America, the backyard and community gardener that nobody else has talked to before. That's the piece that we're into.
And same, I think we all can't be everything to everyone, but it's good to learn who else is out there so we can do some recommendations, but you don't want to stay too far off your mission because they're pretty big already.
Okay, thank you. And Beth, the next question is for you. Who or what was the model for your organization?
Well, I saw one called Waste Not down in Arizona. My sister and daughter lived down there, and I went to visit, and my sister's best friend was the ED for probably 15 years, and I talked to her for about 2 years when I was thinking about it and started asking around town to see if anybody was doing it here, and they were not. And so they had been around, I think they've had their 30-something anniversary, and Judy, who came up from there, she said they had been around when she started there 19 to 20 years, and they just had 4 trucks at that time, and we're at 4 trucks now, so I don't know, what does that say? So, yeah, Waste Not, Arizona.
Sorry. Gary, I think that this question is probably mostly for you, but do you have any kind of sense about how much food waste is accelerated by fall frost?
By what?
By fall frost. So whatever's left in the garden, and then the frost comes, and it can kill some plants if they're not plucked in time.
I've never been asked the question, and I don't know the answer, but I know it's not zero because my own garden has been the victim of that. I wake up, where I live in New Jersey is in the mountains, and I'm on the downside of a hill, so cold air settles. It's called a frost pocket. And so the Weather Channel says the temperature is going to be 39 degrees or 42 degrees, but my plants have said, no, it got down to 31. And so I don't know how much, but there's going to be loss. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is nothing that you've done deliberately, and certainly nothing you could have done anything about. I'm asking people to deal with what they can do something with. But if weather hits you, and out here you have it happening all the time, whatever, it's tornadoes or whatever, that's way beyond your control. But the things you can control is what you should be acting on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, thank you. We have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Beth, what is the most common item that you see donated after food? Or, I'm sorry, after bread?
Good. I didn't catch that after bread because that is. We have in our charts kind of showed that it's the produce, and that varies depending on time of year. Sometimes we get a lot of apples or pallets of bananas, or when the potatoes all come in. And what's interesting about that is when we go to take it to different pantries, and they know what days we're coming, but sometimes, evidently, our food bank or a lot of other places get the same glut at the same time. So usually they're looking for it, but all of a sudden, everybody has a ton of it. And so then it's finding new places for it.
Yeah, let me add something to that. I think it's really important. Different plants grow and are harvested at different times in the year. What we have gotten away from is taking advantage of those surges when the potatoes are ready, the tomatoes are ready. We expect if I want a peach in January, I'll have a peach in January. But if we shifted our eating a bit to more coincide with the agricultural cycle of where we were, there'd be less food waste, we'd be better nourished, and we'd be in sync with, this is how our great-grandparents and further back lived. When the food was there, they used it.
Okay, great, thank you. This is going to be our last question of the evening, and it is for both of you. So a lot of what we've talked tonight is fixing the gap between food waste and hunger, but beyond that, how do you see your work relating to food waste and health?
Let me start with that. First of all, anytime fresh food gets to people who don't have fresh food, it immediately impacts their health. There's no question about it. And thank you for the question. Monday, this came in the mail. This is the State of Obesity, Better Policies for a Healthy America for 2019 from the Trust for America's Health. I get this every year. It's a study on updates of stuff. And I was going to read one number to you when I did my presentation, so I'm going to do it now. This breaks out the statistics on obesity, diabetes, and other issues on a state-by-state basis. So here in Nebraska, 68.9% of people are either obese or overweight. That's a BMI 25 or higher. And believe me, this is not the worst state. It's not good, but there are states far worse than this. This is a major a problem here, because the same thing goes when you go to the diabetes in this state. Almost 10% of the adults have diabetes. We have a whole host of issues, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and on and on and on, that are diet impacted. And the more that people, those who need a food pantry and those who just go shopping for themselves, the more they have access to and take advantage of healthier food, the healthier the community is, the healthier the country is, the healthier obviously they are. So the impact is huge. But this is the one thing that I think we individually can all solve. I can't keep myself from getting certain problems if my body decides to do it, but I can choose to eat healthier. The problem is if you go to a food pantry, you don't have the choice. You go to a food pantry, it's just processed food. That's not your choice. And that's where the community, the gardeners can step in, or programs can step in with rescued food to make that healthier food available. Ultimately, the people and the planet benefit from that.
You know, the health issue, and part of it is, I don't know why we can't get them to cut down on how much bread is, putting bread out at tables and bread. Anyway, I just see that there are a lot more opportunities out there to get more food to more people, trying to explore even outside of pantries. There are a lot of people that don't even qualify for pantries. And then our great pantries that are here, we run into a problem that if it's a school closed day because of weather, now we don't want our trucks and drivers to go out if it's not safe, but a lot of times it's safe. The pantries all close. Now where do we take the food? We go to a lot of other places, but we need big unloads because those are take it. So I'm trying to stay open to, and then some people that just make above that line, but they have a lot of kids. I think a mutual friend of ours said, a guy that worked at her in her buildings and stuff, he has all these kids, he makes just that much too much, but he needs food, good healthy food. So always looking at ways to explore how to get more of this good healthy food to more people in more ways.
Can I add one thing? There are millions of Americans who are dealing with chronic diseases, diabetics, people living with HIV, AIDS, or whatever. They're struggling already to try to deal with their illness. The more that we can make fresh food available to them, the easier the struggle is, the better the chance that whatever the medical care they're getting will be complemented by an improvement in the quality of the nutrition they have.
Okay, thank you. That was our last question for tonight. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to our speakers, our donors, our staff members.